So let me begin session number 2 on developing integrated and inclusive smooth transition strategies aligning the national development plans to drive seamless transition, sustain progress, and achieve SDGs. As we learned from this morning session, the graduation brings us both positive side and negative side. And to address the negative side, we have to develop a good smooth transition strategy reflecting our own national context. The objective of this session is to drive high-level policy and technical dialogue on designing and implementing integrated, inclusive, and nationally owned smooth transition strategies for LDC on the graduation track. Its core objective is to identify practical and effective ways to align STS with national development plans and STS SDG frameworks so that graduation is sustainable, irreversible, and broad-based. The discussion will focus on strengthening institutional capacity for coordinating transition management and risk monitoring, fostering active engagement from government, parliamentarians, civil society, the private sector, and development partners, and exploring innovative approaches to mobilize and align resources, including ODA, South-South cooperation, and private investment to support the transition and mitigate vulnerabilities. The session will also share lessons and best practices to accelerate policy progress, turning graduation into a catalyst for resilient and transformative development. With this, our session is honored to have a keynote speaker from the University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, Professor Salim Ryan, and 3 panelists. His Excellency Mr. Kesan Deki, Cabinet Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet of Bhutan. His Excellency Mr. Thongpan Sawanphet, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Lao PDR to the United Nations in New York, and Mr. Matthias Bruckner, Chief Commission for Development Policy Secretariat, UNDESA. Right now, I would like to invite Mr. Ryan to make keynote remarks for this session in response to the following question. How can data, evidence, and risk assessments be used within STS to identify and manage post-graduation challenges and external shocks? And how can South-South and triangular cooperation help build knowledge and technical capacity? Mr. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Moderator, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I also thank the organizers for inviting me to this extremely important event. We know that time is very limited, so I'll be first in delivering my presentation. So it's about integrated and inclusive smooth transition strategies for SDG-aligned national plans. So, it doesn't work. Okay. So if we look at the graduation at a glance, and I think we are very much aware of these statistics, there are 44 LDCs today, 1.19 billion people, 12% of the world population. And LDCs contribute, that less than or around 1% of global trade, less than 2% of global GDP. Only 8 countries have successfully graduated so far. Bangladesh, Nepal, and Laos PDR are scheduled to graduate in 2026, Solomon Island in 2027, and Cambodia and Senegal in 2029. So we know that this smooth transition from the LDC category, we have heard in this morning how important this is. After graduation is effective, the country is no longer, it doesn't benefit from the privileges what as an LDC they are enjoying. So the LDC support measures will be kind of phased out. And the country implements a transition strategy supported by the development partners. And we know that there will be a monitoring process from CDP, and then there will be a kind of periodic review to see the progress. So we also know that why these smooth transition strategies matter. Graduation leads to phased withdrawal of various, the benefits. Of course, these duty-free, quota-free markets, trade access, concessional finance and grants, technical assistance, special flexibilities in WTO and TRIPS rules. So the issue is that without planning, the risk of income decline, competitiveness loss, fiscal gaps, social regressions, these are very much there for the LDC. I think we have heard few of these things in the first session today. We also know this Doha Program for Action 2022-2031. It gives the mandate. It calls for comprehensive, inclusive, nationally owned STS for every graduating LDC. But STS must be embedded in national development plans, budget frameworks, SDG implementation strategies. And the goal is to have irreversible, resilient, SDG-aligned graduation. And why is integration with national plans critical? It prevents duplication and policy inconsistencies. It ensures budget alignment with STS goals. It enhances whole-of-government coordination. It strengthens long-term sustainability and links graduation directly to SDG acceleration. And when I was looking for something to understand what could be the elements of a strong, integrated STS, so I thought that these are the 5 elements should be very much there. There must be clear alignment with national priorities and medium-term expenditure framework. Sectoral action plans with costed interventions. I think this is extremely important. We can list a lot of interventions. Unless we cost them, unless we know how much investment is needed to implement them, it will be very vague analysis. Risk management and early warning systems. Domestic resource mobilization strategy. We heard this thing in the morning, the importance of domestic resource mobilization. But I think to come up with the right kind of strategy, country context or country-specific strategy is very important. And one-size-fits-all strategy would not really work. We need to understand the country context. And monitoring and accountability architecture, that is extremely important. How do you really set the goals? What targets? Now, how do you really monitor them? And how do you make sure the whole process is accountable and the transparency is there? I think these will be very, very important in the coming days. So we also know that this STS process needs to be participatory and inclusive. When I talk about participatory, it must include parliament, local government, civil society, private sector, women's group, youth networks, and various other segments of the society. The consultation process should be transparent, social, to bring or get the social legitimacy, and there must be a strong political buy-in, and so that there is a continuity across government. Even if the change in government, there must be a continuity of this whole process. And also we know that there is a need for institutional coordination, and which is something I'll come to in a few minutes to highlight the importance of this institutional coordination, because many of the LDCs, and since they are LDCs, they have this serious problem of institutional coordination across different segments of the government, and also integrating or coordinating among different actors, not only the government, but also private sector, civil society, and various actors within the economy. Interministerial STS steering committee is extremely important. Technical working group for sectors, integration with SDG unit, finance and planning ministries, and engagement with UN mechanism, especially with the EMM and IGRADE, so with UN OHRLLS. Also, we know that how important the data, evidence, and risk assessment, they are, how important they are, especially with respect to tracking fiscal sustainability, debt indicators, export dependence, scenario modeling for shocks, climate pandemics, commodity prices. I think these are also, when I was looking at different STS of different countries, LDCs, the graduating countries, I see that there is a gap there. How to really build different scenarios, and based on that, how do you define your strategy? And the point I really made in the earlier session is that a small comment that given that the global trade, global development landscape, and even some of the national development landscape and political economy landscape have become very volatile in many countries, we need to actually come up with several scenarios and then devise our strategy based on the scenarios. Use SDG indicators for social vulnerability tracking, and integrate geospatial and climate data for resilience planning. So I think I could not change the slide anyway. Sorry, I'm trying to make a synergy between my laptop and the presentation. So the financing smooth transition is very important, and we need to know the kind of what are the blended options are there. Respect to domestic resources, ODN, constitutional windows, South-South cooperation, climate finance, private sector, and PPPs. But we need to prioritize green economy, diversification, and human capital. Now, how do you do that? How do you really prioritize these things in the STS? These remain very important because what I see, and I'll come back to that point in a minute or so, that probably there is a tendency to come up with a very long list of activities. But unless we prioritize them, we make some ruthless, prioritization, and then I think some of the whole focus will be lost. And we also know that how important partnership that sustain graduation, especially with respect to regional bodies and peer learning platforms, bilateral partners supporting transition periods, private sector partnership for value chain development, and role of UN support facilities for the next 5 to 10 years post-graduation. I think this commitment, these support measures will be extremely important in the coming days. What I have, while looking at different STS document, I'm just trying to come up with kind of summary observation. So, there are some persistent gaps in STS planning. So still I see that policy fragmentation and siloed ministries, weak institutional capacity and data system. I think this is very common across LDCs. Limited stakeholder participation, insufficient monitoring and risk analysis, probably where we have listed quite a lot of indicators, but we don't really put in place how these will be monitored, and what are the risks, low to medium to high risk factors, while we build these indicators. And I think one important aspect is that STS is often drafted as a standalone document, not integrated into the national planning. I'm sure that some countries, they have tried to do it. They have tried to do it to integrate in the national planning, but still I see that that kind of separation is there. So very quickly, I'll just talk about 3 country experiences: Bangladesh, Laos, and Nepal, because these are the 3 graduating countries expected to graduate next year. So we know that there are progress and challenges when it comes to Bangladesh context. Graduation, it will be in 2026. The country stands out to be the most user of LDC-specific international support measures. And so graduation is therefore expected to have substantial impact, especially in the areas of trade and intellectual property rights. Since Bangladesh is the most user of these trade support measures as an LDC, so the graduation is going to have larger impact on Bangladesh among all LDCs. But the country still has some significant vulnerabilities. And especially we know that in the recent years, there have been some economic transition as well as political transition as well, which have actually contributed to slowing growth, weakness in financial sector, domestic revenue mobilization. And there is a recent debate over graduation deferment, where private sector is very much in favor of having at least 3 to 5 years deferment. They are not really talking about postponing the LDC graduation, but they are in favor of getting few more years. But there is a kind of division we see that whether that is being supported from the government so far, not being supported from the government. So this is still a debate. And that's why I think there's an independent assessment which is taking place in Bangladesh at this moment. There are 5 priorities you can see, STS priorities of Bangladesh, starting from macroeconomy to securing trade preference, improving export diversification, which is extremely important for Bangladesh because it's a highly concentrated export basket, building productive capacity, and then fostering partnership. But I would have been more interested, or I have a kind of, I thought that one important aspect was missing there was that there was not much focus. There was focus, but not much focus on the climate risk and the disaster risk, which should have been one of the pillars of STS priorities in the context of Bangladesh. In the case of Lao PTR, I think it's very much there, the climate change and the disaster management as a 4th pillar. But again, you can see the commonalities, the macro, trade, and human capital development. These are very, very important. The Lao PTR, interestingly, they have framed these STS, they have very much tried to make it in line with their national development plans. In Bangladesh at this moment, the 8th five-year plan is suspended. And since there is going to be a political transition, they're expected to have an election sometime early next year, we are still not sure how this planning process is going to be. So that's why I see a kind of gap. I think this is an important point to take into account in the context of Bangladesh. And in the context of Lao PTR, I see that important aspects is there. But Lao PTR is also going through some significant challenges like high debt and fiscal pressure, heavy dependence on commodities and hydropower, and of course the narrow production base. When it comes to Nepal, I can see that again there are challenges, and Nepal is also going through this political transition. Very importantly, these are something which we can't ignore. We need to take into account these situations, the country context. And the vulnerability is very much there, being a landlocked country. But Nepal's STS is also being kind of in line with that. They tried to integrate with their plans. And you can see that kind of STS priorities. Very much you can see
Dr. Raihan, can you change the slide? We want to see the Nepal slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Extremely sorry. Sorry. So, yes. So, these are the kind of priorities, STS priorities. And you can see in all these 3 LDCs, they have focused on the macro, trade, transformation, and of course, the capacity building capacity. They have some commonalities. But I think one important aspect which is missing, and this is something I thought of as an academician, I can raise this question very strongly, that the SDGs needs to ask hard questions. One hard question is that I see that they tend to be overly broad, and the prioritization is kind of missing there because it lists most of these STS, it lists a lot of activities, a lot of priority areas. So you need to then, it risks the loss of focus, and then how the policymakers, they will actually focus on certain activities, or certain actions which are extremely important for during this graduation phase. I think this is something, and also to address the political trade-offs. And then I think another point is that to address confronting entrenched governance failures, like corruption, bureaucratic resistance, and politicized fiscal policy, weakening its reform credibility.
Professor, could you wrap up in
Yes.
a few minutes?
Sorry
about that.
Yes. So that was my last the hard question slide. Then this, very quickly, I'll just talk about, just very quickly, how to align STS with the national plans, budgets, and SDGs. I think I have already talked about that. It needs to embed it in the planning, but we haven't seen that they have put into the budgeting cycles. That is extremely important. Strengthening whole of the government coordination for coherence and ensuring realistic costing and fiscal resilience. I would really emphasize on that particular aspect, that the costing exercise. Next one is on the institutional mechanism. High-level STS coordination body is extremely important, but make it effective, make it operationalized. And then I think I have talked about this structured platforms of parliament, CSS private sector, ensure transparency through dashboards, annual reviews, and align development partners with development plans. So, and then I think the last one is that the data. This is something I would say still challenging. Build an integrated data system and early warning tools, conduct regular risk and vulnerability assessment, and I think we have heard about this South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation for peer learning. The point I made that this South-South cooperation issue and triangular cooperation, probably this is more important than ever. And LDCs should find out a way to how to have effective collaboration even among the South-South countries, the LDCs, how do they make effective collaboration among themselves to counter the kind of vulnerability or volatility with that global trade and development landscape, and strengthen national analytical and statistical capacity. So I think I'll just, I should stop here. I think this is my conclusion slide. A graduation should be a beginning, not a vulnerability point. Integrated, inclusive, data-driven STS are key for irreversible progress. Global partners must remain engaged beyond graduation year. Countries must ensure that STS are fully embedded in national plans and in the budgeting process, annual budget, backed by strong institutions, socially inclusive, adequately financed. Through these efforts, graduating countries can turn graduation into a platform for long-term sustainable development and SDG acceleration. Thank you very much for your very kind attention.
Thank you, Professor Ryan, for your informative presentation. You have provided us a lot of aspects on STS preparation, as well as the elements, your 5 elements that have to be embedded in STS formulation and the role of STS. So the presentation set the background for our panelists to discuss further. Okay. Since time is not enough, I would request our panelists to reduce your intervention from 10 minutes to less than 10 minutes, let's say 7 minutes. Okay, I am sorry about that. So I now invite His Excellency Mr. Thongpan Suvatphet, Permanent Representative of Laos, PDO to UN, to make his intervention or response to the following question. How can countries design and implement STS that are fully aligned with national development plans, budget frameworks, and STS strategies to ensure coherence and sustainable results? Mr. Suvatphet, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I can speak from here, I hope.
Yes.
Thank you. Excellency Pot Bunak, Secretary of State, Minister of Planning of the Kingdom of Cambodia, and the chair of this session, Excellencies, distinguished speakers and delegates. Once again, it is my great honor to attend this high-level meeting. I am very grateful for the opportunity to share the Lao PDR's national experience in formulating and implementing an integrated and inclusive smooth transition strategy, or STS, as we prepare for graduation from LDC category next year. The Lao PDR journey towards LDC graduation has been a national aspiration since 2000. And then, meeting the globally defined criteria to be eligible for graduation at the 2018 and 2021 triennial reviews represents a major achievement for the Lao PDR. Nevertheless, the prolonged impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and exacerbated by economic and financial difficulties and other global and regional challenges have severely affected the global development aspiration, including the Lao PDR. On the basis of these exceptional challenges, The Lao PDR, together with other graduating countries, Bangladesh and Nepal, as just mentioned, were granted an extended preparatory period of 5 years from the standard period of 3 years, with graduation expected next year in 2026. The graduation, of course, will mark a historic achievement for our country, but we are aware that it will also bring new responsibilities and challenges, especially in the face of global uncertainties. To guide the graduation process, the Lao government was committed to developing a smooth transition strategy, or STS, with support from the United Nations, especially the UN country team. We plan to have our STS that not only manages the risk of graduation, but also accelerates sustainable development and ensure that the process is irreversible. Our STS is built on a clear vision anchored in 3 core objectives. First, smooth graduation so that the transition does not disrupt or reverse our development gains. Second, quality graduation, which means aligning our progress with the National Socio-Economic Development Plan and National Strategy and Vision. And third, sustainable graduation, which ensures that long-term risks are adequately managed. The strategy is also guided by 4 key principles: country ownership, policy coherence, interministerial coordination, and efficient and streamlined monitoring. From the outset, our approach was inclusive, involving a whole of government and whole of society methodology. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs led an interministerial task force, working closely with Lao ministries, the Lao Statistics Bureau, UN agencies, civil society, the private sector, and development partners. We prioritized broad-based consultations, including inception and validation workshops, and also exchanges with fellow graduating and graduated LDCs. This had helped us to learn from the experiences and ensure that all perspectives were incorporated in the STS. Our STS is operationalized through 22 specific actions grouped under 4 strategic pillars. These include, first, macroeconomic stability and financial sustainability, which means ensuring stable fiscal and monetary policy, managing public debt, and safeguarding investment in human capital and climate resilience. Second, trade and investments include promoting trade, attracting foreign direct investment, and improving the business environment for inclusive growth. Third, human capital development and structural transformation focuses on advancing education, decent job creation, rural and urban development, and fostering innovation. And fourth, climate change and disaster management includes integrating climate actions, sustainable resource management, and disaster risk reduction for low carbon resilient development. Each action is led by relevant ministries with clear responsibilities to ensure practical and accountable implementation. A critical success factor has been the full alignment of the STS with our National Socio-Economic Development Plan, sectoral strategies, National Integrated Financing Frameworks, and the SDGs. The priorities in the STS are drawn from these national plans, ensuring that our graduation process does not create parallel structures, but complements, reinforces, and accelerates ongoing development priorities. Our strategy also draws on the Doha Program of Action for LDCs, contextualizing global principles for national implementation, and reinforcing our commitment to leaving no one behind. The implementation of the SDGs is supported by robust monitoring and evaluation mechanism. On the national side, the Laos Statistics Bureau and relevant ministries track progress using integrated indicators aligned with both the National Socio-Economic Development Plan and the SDGs. Besides, the UN Committee for Development Policy provides oversight through the enhanced monitoring mechanism. Another extra effort by the government agency is the submission of an annual report on the SDGs implementation to ensure transparency and accountability. This dual monitoring approach ensures that we can identify and address challenges proactively. Excellencies, along with having in place a good SDGs, we recognize that a smooth and sustainable graduation is not possible without strong partnerships. While the SDGs process has helped focus the attention of government, development partners, the private sector, and civil society on the most pressing challenges and opportunities facing us, we also need to continue working closely with the UN entities, development partners, and with other fellows and DCs, sharing knowledge and facilitating better coordination and targeting of technical and financial assistance. To summarize, our SDGs is a nationally owned, fully integrated, and inclusive roadmap for LDC graduation. By aligning with our national development plans, budget frameworks, and SDG strategies, and by establishing clear actions, robust monitoring, and broad-based partnerships, we are confident that our graduation will be smooth, quality, and sustainable. We are now working on the graduation readiness assessment with the UN, which will be finalized by the end of this year. I hope that our experience will be of useful lesson for other countries on a similar path. We look forward to continue collaboration with all partners to ensure that our transition from LDC status marks the beginning of a new chapter of resilient and inclusive development for the people of the Lao PDR. To conclude, I once again thank you, the government of Qatar, especially UNOHRLS, for hospitality, for excellent arrangements, and also for supporting the Lao PDR in the graduation process. I thank you for the attention and for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency Thong Pan, for sharing with us your experience about your SDGs formulation. Your presentation is very informative. You're telling us a lot, many aspects of your SDGs preparation, including how you start to prepare SDGs all the way to the pillar of your SDGs, as well as how you implement your SDGs. Okay. One thing that I think that is important even for other LDC countries as well as Cambodia is a broad-based consultation approach. We take that in mind and we will go back home and try to follow your pattern, how to make it broad, including all partners involved in the process. Okay, thank you, Excellency. Now, I'd like to invite Her Excellency Madame Kesan Delsi, I'm not sure if I pronounced the name correctly, Cabinet Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet of Bhutan, to make intervention on the following question. What institutional mechanisms best promote inclusive and participatory STS development, effectively engaging governments, parliamentarians, civil society, UN, private sector, and development partners to build broad consensus. Floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the chair of the session, my esteemed keynote speaker, Doctor, for your wonderful reference on the requirements of moving in preparation of SDGs. My fellow members, panel members, ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct honor for me to deliver this statement on behalf of the Royal Government of Bhutan. I would like to add that I extend my sincere appreciation to UN, OHR, LLS, and the Government of Qatar for convening this critical session on developing integrated and inclusive smooth transition strategies. For Bhutan, our core lesson is this, that an STS is not merely a document, it is an act of whole-of-nation ownership. So without effective institutional mechanisms to foster the shared national vision, the impact of even the best development efforts will be minimal. So let me briefly set the context. Bhutan, we successfully graduated from the LDC category in December 2023. It was right after COVID. There was a lot of deliberation on whether we should or we should not. Nevertheless, we thought the time it is necessary for us to move on. So we successfully graduated in December 2023. Long before that date, we recognized, and as Doctor had mentioned earlier, that the need for the process for our graduation, we recognized the necessity of a full integration. So our preparatory works, we started in 2021. We had a white paper on smooth transition strategy. Then the government also then fully embedded these transition measures into the national planning cycle. Our 13th five-year plan, which is from July 2024 to June 2029, is therefore explicitly designed to serve as Bhutan's smooth transition strategy. I can say that this with confidence because as I was listening to Dr. Salim's presentation, I remember I started as a cabinet secretary then. So I remember all the things that he was saying. I personally experienced having undertaken that process, and planning was not something that I never had a planning background. It was more of a finance background. So he made me go back to that day when we started working on the 13th five-year plan. What was very important for us was also the transition of trying to ensure that the 13th five-year plan coincided with the fourth government's term. So we had the third government ending their term. We had the interim government with 3 months, that is as per our constitution. We have a 3-month interim government for the next government to come in. So my team in the Cabinet Secretariat was working on this transition. And it also, this integration served two powerful purposes. It helped us to understand the amount of resources that was required for our transition initiatives. Resources are never sufficient, so we needed to know what are the priorities that we need to take forward, taking into account our domestic resources vis-a-vis our development partner support. It ensured a whole-of-nation focus in implementation because the STS became synonymous with the national plan. And now let me turn to institutional framework that drove this comprehensive approach. We had a central, as we were preparing for the 13th five-year plan, the 13th five-year plan, like I said, is overseen by the Office of Cabinet Affairs and Strategic Coordination, which is under the Prime Minister's office, and that department is under under the Cabinet Secretariat. So, as the central agency for long-term planning and national M&E, this structural arrangement ensured that the process was immediately inclusive and participatory, fostering meaningful consultation right from the top. Then, during the formulation, we conducted extensive consultations across the entire spectrum of the society. The inclusive approach contributed, I think, to two key outcomes that I would like to highlight. It was alignment. It ensured that strategic alignment across all sectoral plans and policies to national priorities, thus enabling collective action. I can say this with confidence because as Cabinet Secretary, I do hold the authority to make sure that all the line ministries are able to come together towards a common vision. And it also promoted a sense of ownership, a deep sense of ownership among diverse stakeholders in implementing the measures. This included essential mechanisms such as we presented some of the activities we undertook was we presented the draft 13th five-year plan to all the political parties so that when they came with their political pledges, they were aware what was the plans that were being developed. Also, they could align their political pledges to what were the technical works being undertaken by this office. We had a lot of dialogues with the private sectors because we also understood that private sector participation is very important. And right now, one of the important private sector dialogues which is taking to fruit is that we have just concluded the first round of reducing the regulatory reforms, ensuring that ease of doing business. Those are still work in progress, which we are working on. This 13th five-year plan also saw something which was never done before, that was consultation. We conducted roundtable meetings to onboard civil society organizations. This was something which was never really done before, and this enabled us to align to the impactful socio-economic projects with the national projects, so national goals. In that way, we were able to bring on board the CSOs and the NGOs. Excellencies, while an inclusive STS formulation is essential, the actual engagement of stakeholders in implementation is far more critical. So how do we build a lasting national coalition towards this shared vision? In Bhutan, we have clear modalities to facilitate this engagement. The private sector in the 13th five-year plan, we have pursued 4 distinct modalities. We have privatization, outsourcing, public and private partnership and collaboration. So this is one way of ensuring private investment. CSOs have been empowered. The government, we have been providing dedicated funding support to the CSOs. We have local government synergy. We conduct local government conferences to ensure that local plans directly relate to national outcomes and deliverables. We have the monthly, if not in person, we do have the Zoom virtual meetings. The COVID has taught us how to use digital technology, so we have it with the local government leaders, also the planning officers of the local governments. We try to understand what are the issues that they are facing. Finally, beyond internal stakeholders, we also continue our engagement with external partners, and we embrace the South and South Triangular Cooperation through frameworks like BIMSTEC and SAARC, while SAARC still needs to get more active. And of course, we also, our bilateral partner, the Government of India, has been very, very supportive of our efforts after graduation. Likewise, we also maintain strong coordinated outreach to the United Nations through the Resident Coordinator's Office for continued technical and financial assistance. Excellencies, I would like to conclude by saying that achieving a sustainable and irreversible graduation relies fundamentally on the existence of integrated, efficient, and inclusive institutional mechanisms for both the development and implementation of the STS. As Cabinet Secretary and on behalf of Bhutan, I would like to state that Bhutan remains deeply committed to sharing our experience and working with all member states, the UN system, and our partners to secure lasting development progress for all LDC graduated countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for sharing Bhutan's experience on graduation. We know that Bhutan is one country having great success in STS preparation as well as after graduation. So Bhutan experience is one that we need to consider, okay, when we develop our own SDGs. Thank you, Your Excellency. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Bracknir, Acting Chief and Secretary of CDP Secretariat, to make his intervention in response to the question, drawing on recent country experiences, how the SDGs facilitated in mobilization and alignment of support from bilateral, multilateral, and private sector partners, and what lessons can be learned on sustaining effective partnerships and resource mobilization beyond graduation for continued SDG progress. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So at the outset, let me also join others in thanking the government of Qatar and our friends from OHLLS in hosting and organizing this really important event. As mentioned, I am the acting secretary.
Could you please speak closer to the microphone? We can't hear you.
Okay, excuse me. A little low. Try to be lower to that. Thank you. So I'm the acting secretary of the Committee for Development Policy, which is part of the UN DESA. Just to start, so we do have indeed quite a number of experiences, as we just heard already, some of those, because we do have now 8 countries that have graduated. We have 6 countries that are graduating, and there will be more countries to come in the future to come. So we have then quite a bit of experiences, in particular from the work of the Committee for Development Policy, because that is the body that is not only responsible for recommending which countries should graduate from the list of least developed countries, but it's also mandated to monitor the development progress and the smooth transition of graduating and recently graduated countries. And that monitoring really has expanded in scope over time. The mandate came into place in 2005 and was first applied for Cabo Verde in 2009. And if you see it, check this morning, Cabo Verde, there were 2 monitoring reports, but then the monitoring had been expanded to cover also graduating countries, and the time lengths for monitoring graduated countries have been extended. So we see countries like Vanuatu, which graduated in 2020, has already 11 monitoring reports, which also have become far more detailed. And in particular, since introduction of the enhanced monitoring mechanism that had been mentioned this morning by Angola, we also have annual consultations with graduating and recently graduated countries. In addition to this, the UN DESA also provides a wide range of support to smooth transition strategies of countries, whether it's in the formulation of smooth transition strategies. We just had last month a regional workshop jointly with the government of Cambodia for sharing experiences with smooth transition strategies. And we do all this support together with our UN partners. So we see first, countries are invited to prepare smooth transition strategy. So it's not an obligation, it's just a recommendation, but basically all countries do. From the 14 countries, and if you take out Botswana, because the concept of a smooth transition strategy didn't exist in the 1990s, the remaining 13 countries, 12 have had or are developing a smooth transition strategy. And we heard already a lot about integration, so I may not need to go into details there. We also heard already this morning that countries are choosing very different approaches because, as we have learned, all countries are different. That also means there is no blueprint for a smooth transition strategy. However, there's an immense value in learning from others. Okay. Do you hear me better now? Good, thank you. Yeah, it's a little low for me. So there is an immense value in learning from other countries, not in order to copy strategies from others, but in order to see what worked in other countries, why it did work in other countries, and then to see what can be useful for one of the other countries then. We see basically, if we look at the different experiences, we have three main approaches. We have seen full integration of LDC graduation into the main national development planning instrument, and we heard just the example from Bhutan, which follows exactly that approach. We also have some countries which have used their national development plan as strategy, as the strategy for smooth transition, but develop an additional action plan rather than integrating the actions in the main development planning strategy. And then we have countries like Laos, PDR that have a standalone strategy, but this strategy is not separate from the national development plan, but it's rather strongly linked and integrated with that. And if we look at the reasons why, or the factors that determine which direction countries choose, we see one big factor here is the scale and also the nature of graduation impacts. We see related to that there are different needs for prioritization of action within the broader national development planning framework. We also have maybe more simple reasons like the national planning timeframes that need to be aligned in order for full integration, for example. And we also see that the national development planning frameworks, or better, the broader development planning governance system varies quite a bit between countries, in particular also with relation to the link to budgetary processes. So if we look then more specifically to the question of resource and support mobilization, we do see the first real important observation is that there is a need for quite a bit of resources. So there's a wide range of support and resources that are needed for a smooth transition, but that's needed for two parts. It's needed for graduation-specific challenges, but to a large extent, and in most cases for the larger part, it's for continuing challenges for structural transformation and for sustainable development. So these resources are needed not just for graduation, but in the process of graduation. It's also important to note development and trading partners are urged to, and they have committed to support smooth transition strategy implementation, and we had already heard this morning quite a bit of commitments from development partners in that regard. We also see, and this has been raised also this morning, if we look at experiences, the impact of LDC graduation per se on accessing concessional finance is actually small. That is normally not the main impact, but there can be, of course, specific exception in that. But we find overall that impacts in the area of trade are often more profound than in the area of concessional financing. And then it's important to note that, that the extension of existing LDC-specific support measures, it's one component of graduation support, and it's a very important component of graduation support. However, it's not the only one. There's also really importance of graduation-specific support, whether it's through technical assistance and or through financial support. And this, and maybe together with specific additional incentives, would then move one towards a truly incentivized graduation framework. If you look then at what we've seen from lessons, the main one is really, it's on integration. So pursuing an integrated approach to resource and support mobilization is important. So LDC graduation really should not be seen as an isolated event. And therefore also to link graduation to existing budgetary processes and to existing stakeholder processes and partnerships. For example, we have in the global framework set by the General Assembly, highlighting this consultative mechanism between graduating countries and its development and trading partners. And we've seen from experience this often works best if it's if graduation is integrated into existing development roundtables or other processes that exist already at the national level, rather than creating a new process there. Then we have both two excellent examples here on using the preparatory period for broad-based multi-stakeholder consultations, both domestically and also reaching out internationally, and for coordination. And this is really important. We see now, originally, the plan was the standard was for 3-year time frame for preparing for graduation. That has been set basically to 5 years now. So, but it's important to use this time, like in the examples we heard right from the beginning, because there's always a challenge that for some actors, 5 years may always sound, oh, that's a long time in the future. So therefore, some may only start to be engaged relatively close to the actual date. So this is a main factor here that we see. It's also important to try to leverage the idea, yes, LDC graduation is first and foremost a national success, but it's also an international success, and therefore there is room for trying to leverage this idea in order to gain additional support. And as we've heard this morning also, requesting support should be done proactively. We have seen excellent examples of really multi-million-dollar support provided to graduating countries for specific graduation issues, but one needs to approach this partner, one needs to ask for the support, and that also holds for the United Nations. The United Nations system stands there to support countries for a smooth transition, but one has to request. The central role at the country level, of course, is the resident coordinator, but then there's also the whole international system, whether it's OHLLS, whether it's DESA, whether it's UNCTAD, or whether it's the specialized agencies or the regional commissions, whether it's the regional commission in ESCAP in Asia and the Pacific, or ECA in Africa. Then we also see multilateral processes can be very effective. They can be slow, we all know this, within the UN system, things do not move that fast, but one can be very, very effective. We heard this morning from Maldives, for example, how they managed to get specific support, like on the travel benefits, by asking, by negotiating proactively to get the support. We've seen in the area of extending duty-free, quota-free market access within the WTO. When that started in 2005, I believe the European Union was the only provider who granted a 3-year extended access to their duty-free, quota-free program. If we look nowadays, it's not only the EU, it's also Turkey, the United Kingdom, it's China, it's Canada, most recently also Japan extended that, and therefore maybe hopefully in the future even more. So you see, using multilateral processes can also be quite effective. So if we then look more towards the future, we heard already this morning the General Assembly decided to establish an ad hoc working group on smooth transition, which should hopefully lead to a new General Assembly resolution. This is actually, the recommendation for this had been done by the Committee for Development Policy already in 2023. So it's great to see this process there, because this process then could not only consolidate and clarify the graduation process, but also strengthen the existing support for graduation, and thereby it could anchor the international support truly as part of the rules-based multilateral system. We've also heard already this morning, it's good to have bilateral initiatives, but it's far more efficient actually, and also more effective to have a multilateral system in place. With that, let me move to the end. Just to highlight, we do have a variety of sources available on our website where you find detailed information on all the support that exists, on experiences that exist with graduation, and also a more broader one on the LDC category. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias, for your presentation about the information on LDC countries. Also, the way how graduating countries can prepare for their graduation. All information is in your hand because your website has everything there. I like to visit your website. Thank you. Now we have some time for questions, comments from the floor. Okay. So I now invite your excellencies and colleagues to make comments or remarks on session number 2. I would request you to indicate your interest to take the floor by raising your hand, and I will give the floor in order of the speaker request. I think we do not have much time, so I would like to ask you to make your question or comments or remarks as short as possible. Let's say 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. I see Excellency Chisantum. Okay.
Thank you, Excellency. I have a very short question to the Bhutan. If I not understanding, you mentioned that during the preparation of the smooth transition strategy, Bhutan involved all political parties. Is correct? I think it's very important that how we can involve all political parties in the process of the preparation, because they are not included in the government. This is my short question. Thank you.
Any other hands? Okay, Excellency, please go ahead. And then who's next?
Thank you very much. Should I start? Should I? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Selim Ryan, for your excellent presentation and showing the audience that how the STS are prepared for the whole 3 graduating countries. And you have already heard that Bangladesh will be graduating next year. And as per requirement of the UNDESA, Bangladesh has already prepared the STS. And the STS, the overarching goal of the STS is shifting towards high road economic development from current economic model, dominated by a trade preference dependent export-oriented garment sector and a tariff protection dependent import competing sector, both relying on low wages and weak compliance. And as mentioned by Mr. Rahan, that this STS should be aligned with the national development planning. And usually Bangladesh, the short-term planning is annual development program, and the mid-term is 5-year plan. While going on the 8th 5-year plan, the government changed, and it's actually hold on. So still we are working to integrate this STS into our national planning. But we are now working on integrate STS into the SDG, and in the STS we have actually prepared a time-bound action plan, and 37 ministries divisions are actually involved in implementing all these activities. But the thing is, to implement this STS, we require actually a lot of resources. So we actually request the friends of LDCs to come forward that we can smoothly implement our STS. And as you have heard, that Bangladesh is the largest LDC in terms of both GDP and population. So and Bangladesh is the highest utilizer of ISMs. Bangladesh utilizes 75% of the ISMs, and the next one is Myanmar, only 25%. So if Bangladesh sustain the graduation, I believe that all other graduating countries and LDCs will sustain their graduation. So I request all actually, friends of LDCs and all, involved parties to come forward to help Bangladesh so that Bangladesh can sustain their graduation and can smoothly implement the STS. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In the list, I have UNIDO. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. May I proceed? Yeah?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I am a program officer with the Africa Bureau and a focal point for LDCs at UNIDO. My question is, UNIDO has been developing country programming frameworks for many LDCs in Africa, namely lately Senegal, who is going to graduate, Togo, Chad, Guinea, and others. They all have national development plans where we don't see any trace, actually, of this graduation process. There's a lot of structural transformation and so on, everything that's in the DPOA, but we don't see that. And our experience showed also that UNSDCF doesn't treat that also as a priority. So my question is, shouldn't that be systematic in UNSDCS for LDCs at the CCA process? This should be included, because there's also another problem is that even the government is not sensitized to the question itself and don't see it as a priority and a direction they could actually take. Many don't understand what graduation means, even at government level. So maybe it was discussed that the RC has this in some kind of way responsibility, but it should be manifested in the UNSDCF. And you talked also a lot about a big demand in funding for an STS. These countries, it's already very difficult to mobilize funds to implement strategic approaches and country programming. So shouldn't this STS be, shouldn't these funds be maybe taken part from already national strategies that already embed graduation criteria? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Since we have one more person requesting for intervention, so I would invite him, and then if no other, I will give the floor to our panelists. Okay, the next person is Mr. Tess Butcher, right? Do I? No? No. Okay. Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the presenters and the moderators for the presentation. My question is on you talked about the importance of having the STS in place. But of course, you know, LDCs have the national development plans in place being developed through a robust planning framework. So I would want to know whether there are countries that have sustained their graduation without the STSs in place, having developed these strategies in place. So I would want to know whether there are those countries, and maybe if they are there, I would want to have a feel of their experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I take another question. So we have.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is OHRLS, and just thanking the speakers today, but also the questions from the floor. And following up on what the colleague from UNIDO said, very much agree there with the colleague that there is this need to integrate the smooth transition strategies with the national development plans and the common country assessments, cooperation frameworks, etc., and that we in OHRLS, as the chair of the interagency task force and also under IGRAD, which operationalizes the support to the graduating countries, including in developing their smooth transition strategy, that's our objective, and that's happening actually. Laos is a very good example where this is the case, where as we saw today also on the screen from one or two of the speakers, where the country is integrating their smooth transition strategy with their development plan, and that's the objective. It's also one of the objectives of the readiness assessment to ensure that that is taking place. And as my USG this morning mentioned, us, OHRLS, as the chair of the interagency task force, tries to combine all the UN entities, the UN country team, etc., to achieve that. And I think this was a very important point, and it should be pursued. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So now I'm taking the last question and then give the floor to the...
Thank you so much, Excellency.
Please go ahead.
The presentations were all really very solid and substantive. And I think we got a good feel of what's happening at the national level, but what is clear is that the issue of capacity remains at the forefront. So I would want to ask the colleague from DESA, to what extent in the past have we had like capacity building programs, not with one country on an individual basis, but at a group of countries, 4, 5, 6, either regional or otherwise, to leverage economies of scale in terms of boosting the capacity to manage this sustainable graduation process. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite our keynote speaker as well as panelists to address the comment and questions from the floor. If we still have time after that, we will take the round of questions. Okay, now, Excellency Chintum, following by 6 other participants. So I would like to invite Her Excellency from Bhutan first. Okay.
Thank you for the question. I'm sure many countries will not be able to relate with the type of democracy and the governance that we have in Bhutan. In Bhutan, what we do have is prior to elections, political parties are already registered. So we already know which political parties will be running for the government. They would be, to take part in the election. So we get the details from the election commission, and we do engage with them. Unlike other countries, we do not have many parties. Usually it would be, in the last election we had around 4, so 4 political parties, but at the end, from the primary round, we just, whoever is the top 2 parties will then move on into the, they will contest the final elections. So I'm sure it is difficult for you to imagine, but we do not have parties just cropping up. They have to be registered with the election commission, and for us it's just a handful, so we know which are the political parties that we need to discuss with. While your question is also correct in terms of trying to say, how can we discuss before they are formed? In Bhutan, we do not have much differences in ideology in terms of the political parties. All our political parties, we do not have very differing ideological views. So it is all based on the philosophy of gross national happiness. So more or less, the concerns or the need of the people would always be the same. So the discussion mainly happened with the political parties because we thought it was important to let them know what is the resources available in the 13th five-year plan so that they do not go and make pledges that may be beyond what the government can, what our technical people have forecasted to be the revenue or the fiscal situation. We explain to them the fiscal deficit situation. We explain to them the domestic resource mobilization, forecasting, so that they become aware and they make informed choices as to what needs to be there in their political pledges. So that was something new. It was never done before. And I thought, and in my own personal view, it was well taken by the political parties as well as also by the bureaucrats, because it helped us to align and also listen to them and, of course, take forward their suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I turn to Professor Ryan. Do you have any response to the...
A very quick just comment. I'm thankful to the comments and views expressed by the participants and also the co-panelists. One thing is that what I think that this STS is a strategy document. It really needs to be different from any plan document. So we need to be a bit careful while we come up with this STS. We don't really need to make it very long, with a long list of activities, because in any case, the development plans, they're talking about these things. We need to be very focused. And while doing that, in the plan document, in any form in the country, we need to have a clear mapping. What kind of activities in the plan would be emphasized in the STS. Not everything in the plan would be replication or duplication of things. So I fear, that tendency is very much there. That's why sometimes we see a very huge document of STS and we kind of lost how to implement it. Not to engage all the ministries. This is my another suggestion, because again, will lose the prioritizing, how to emphasize or lose the focus. Emphasize or focus on few ministries which are responsible, and then, and the connected ministries will follow through. So I think these prioritizations, this refocusing, make it a real strategy document rather than a big document. I think that will really help to operationalize STS. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matthias.
Yes, thank you very much for these interesting comments and questions. Maybe to our colleague from UNIDO on the specific question of integrating graduation in UN Common Country Assessment and Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks. There are some positive examples, I believe, in Lao PDR. I had seen the strategies there. Their graduation is integrated, but I do agree that sometimes that seems to be still a challenge. Sometimes the factor is just time. When graduation, if a common country assessment comes up before country is really on the graduation radar, it may happen that it's not taken aboard really by the leading UN entities there. The other factor I think is really important, the matter of request from the country. So, and I think this is sometimes a critical point. Country ownership is first and foremost the element that decides on successful graduation. We see if a country has strong interest, strong ownership on graduation, then the country will also address it with the resident coordinator and also with the country teams, and then allowed to use that to have pressure, to have it integrated in the UN strategies and frameworks on the ground. And maybe also to the question on directly, it says from the technology, or a colleague from the Technology Bank, this is indeed an important part to move beyond project-based support. So I have to say, most support we from UNDESA, and I think also all other international, also regional entities do. Normally projects already cover more than one country, 3, 4, 5 countries, so there are some forms of synergies already there that one can harness, one can use shared learning experiences. This can be very useful. Nevertheless, that's certainly not shouldn't be the end, and I think Roland highlighted already IGRAD, the Sustainable Graduation Support Facility, which goes back on an idea from CDP, and then really to have it as to move towards program-based support, that it's really a facility that entities that has the resources that country can access to get the support they needed, and then depending on what type of support is really needed to have then it implemented on that side. So once that is fully operationalized, I think then if that question comes again in a few years, I guess the example will be there. There is already fully integrated support on that. Maybe briefly also to the question from Uganda, it really very much depends on the country. We've seen here, like from Bhutan, there are positive examples of countries that have successfully graduated using their existing national development planning frameworks. Others have standalone strategies. It very much depends on the country. So therefore, using opportunities like this to learn from others is really the main avenue there. There's no one-size-fits-all on how to approach LDC graduation. There are many ways, depending on the country, that then leads to a sustainable graduation. Maybe also to confirm, so far we have seen no country that has been falling back into the category of countries that have already graduated. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias, for responding to the audience comments. Excellency Thong Pan, did you have any comments or answers to the audience?
Thank you, Chair. I share the views expressed by distinguished speakers here that for the STS, I think it should be tailored to meet the country's need for graduation. For the Lao PDR, as already mentioned, that we have integrated our STS into our national development plan and also to our integrated national financial framework so that the STS could be effectively implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. All questions are answered. All comments are addressed, and time approaching to the end. So I just want to share a few points given the audience comments and the presentation of our panelists. Okay. One is about the broad-based consultation. Okay. Cambodia is trying to adopt that because we know that's a good way that we can ensure inclusive SDGs formulation and implementation. But somehow things never come as we expected. Based on our experience to other two countries, in the previous 2 weeks, we learned one thing that we can use as an example. Okay, before getting to that, political parties, okay, never easy to get them involved. Okay, that's why His Excellency Chantum wants to learn from Bhutan experience. Thank you for sharing. Okay. One other thing is by the private sector. We see the importance of private sector in this urgent priority. But when we shared with them about the country going to grade 8 from the LDC, they said right away, why you rush to grade 8? Stay longer because we benefit more from being least developed countries. Okay. If you graduate that fast, we do not have time to repair. So please make it more, make it longer. Okay. We try to give them the story, the necessary, everything that we need to show the world that we can survive on our own. We can strengthen our internal capacity. We can work with other partners at a more higher status than LDC, so on and so forth. All the reply is just, we're not ready, we're not ready. So based on today and tomorrow experience, we will learn more how to implement the broad-based consultation in our own countries. Another one is about the SDGs as a standalone document or the strategy integrated into the National Development Plan. To me, I think either way is fine, as Matthias has mentioned. Okay, but we see that if we have the STS as a standalone document, that can help us, make us easier in several ways. Okay, one is we know what impacts that we face after graduation. And we have to identify, we have to design something to address those right away. It means the immediate priority. In the action, the National Development Plan, we have series of strategies and actions that we have to implement, and just not one mandate. It's continuing till the country reach one level. But for the SDGs, we see that we just take things that deserve immediate intervention. Okay, that intervention must be within the National Development Plan, meaning that SDGs is standalone but not separate and supplement to the National Development Plan. That's what I see. Okay, and I haven't decided, my team have not decided yet about the STS for Cambodia. We will do it next year. Within 3 weeks, we will decide. Okay, thank you. So time is up. So I think we exhaust the question from the audience, also the answers from the panelists and the keynote speaker. So I would like to thank our keynote speaker and panelists for their presentation and sharing their experience. And also would like to thank Excellencies, participants for spending your time listening to our speakers and your active involvement in this session. Finally, I would like to thank UNH or OHR LLS for organizing this event, and also to the government of Qatar for supporting this high-level forum. Thank you. I declare the session is closed. Thank you.